Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Primary Care Committee. We've got apologies this morning from Dr. Aracina, Nick Germain, Nicola Ryan and Mr. Kumar. We are still quorate. Declarations of interest are included. We understand that clinicians will be conflicted on anything relating to decisions around primary care. What we have noted, Sue, as well from the internal audit on conflicts of interest, we've got to be quite specific now how we note somebody's potential conflict, and there's set wording to do with that which Charlotte is copied on. Eric? Eric, did you want to come in? Oh, Victoria, do you want to come in while we wait for Eric? Yeah.
Yeah, just to say, Sam, that I will be updating the conflicts of interest. I have a family member that is now a prospective employee of the CCG, so I just want that noted on conflicts of interest. So I'll declare that through Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Eric, are you able to speak?
Yeah, yes, I hope so. I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yes, no, I've updated this with Cheryl, but just making it clear for this committee that I am currently the interim clinical director for Retford and Villages PCN.
Yeah, it will filter through, Eric. It just this is the master that we use, so once Cheryl's updated it, they'll all be updated.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to make it explicit for this primary care committee meeting.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. Okay. Next item is to approve the minutes from the 10th of September. These are checked outside of the meeting. So if you just approve them for accuracy, and please speak up. Scroll through. So take items references 1 to 3. All section 4. Any comments? Section 5. 7, 8, 9. 10 through to 14. Okay, thank you. So if you can approve those, please. And action log. Most of them are completed or on the agenda today. We've got just two note. One is around the press release to highlight the positive results of the GP survey. Idris, Victoria, that's on an amber.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So the South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw ICS had intended to produce a survey system-wide and all stakeholders press release. One was drafted, which was then discussed at the healthcare management team meeting for the ICS, but it was felt that it may backfire in effect. However, we are looking at doing something more locally. It's possible that, and I think we've already got a good idea of the contents of that, and I think Andrew was sort of just pulling some of that together. It's possible, and this may come up later on, that we'll be putting some investment into primary care for the winter period, and it may be that we link it in with that now, so we can recognise that primary care is under pressure, but we're investing in trying to support that, whilst at the same time promoting all of the efforts and the fantastic work that primary care have been doing, both now and throughout sort of the pandemic, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're frozen, Sam.
We mark that is back.
I think what she said was she's going to try logging off and logging back on again.
I think think that might be what you said.
You're very good at interpreting gobbledygook, can't you?
Idris, would you just like me to take the action around the IT infrastructure whilst we wait for Sam? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, you might.
Yeah, we could do that, yeah.
Okay, so obviously as part of the consideration of the Winter Access Fund, and obviously we'll pick that up further on the agenda, it's kind of overtaking this as an action. And one of the things that we are looking at is telephony and the idea of investing in some telephony support for practices. So as part of that, we will therefore need to undertake where that's most needed. So that needs that resourcing in order to help us to do that. So that is part of that work, which is why we've not progressed specifically on this particular item. It does need resources to do that. We've not had the opportunity to do that yet, but it will be tied into this wider access funding potential. And we've put that on the list of initiatives for further consideration. So it's not completed as we've undertaken the audit, but the work to try and progress it is still ongoing.
Okay.
You're back moving, Sam. So
Thanks.
that's
I can't
great.
even blame the children because I'm on my own. So
You can blame them anyway, Sam. I usually do.
Okay. So on those two, so on the first one, Idris, because it's been picked up, the press release elsewhere, and the shall we keep that one as completed because it is picked up elsewhere?
We can do it as completed, but what we'll do is we'll circulate whatever it is that we've got in terms of the final content to the whole of the committee. So you will receive a copy of that. Okay.
And Victoria on the telephone, do you want to keep that one on?
Yeah, can we just put that as deferred, Sam, if that's okay?
Yep, that will. Okay. Matters arising. There is the flu flow chart. Andrew, to note this?
Yeah, we approved it virtually. It was virtually approved last time almost by the time we got to this committee, but we just changed out with a couple of tweaks that Rob put in and we approved it. So this is really just to note that formally here.
Okay. Any comments?
Been sent to NHS England, I should say, as well.
All right. Use of approved. And then we're on to the agenda, which is primary care update, and first item from Victoria and Idris, an ICS transition update.
Do you want to do the place as the SRO, Victoria? Do you want to sort of kick off with the transition, and then I'll pick up on the wider ICB, ICS?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So on the transition, I'll focus on the closed down nature of the CCG. So we have obviously established now a task and finish group internally to the CCG, which meets now on a very regular basis with a formal programme management structure in place. There is a guiding document, which is an NHS England closed down checklist that we are using to support the conversations with our Nottinghamshire colleagues about the closed down functions and tasks that need to be undertaken in preparation for the 1st of April next year, when obviously the ICB will come into statutory form, pending obviously the progress of the legislation still through Parliament. So the formal programme mechanism allows us to maintain the overall insight in terms of progress, and obviously we will update governing body and audit committee regularly, and indeed I attended audit committee yesterday to do that. I've also set up some informal meetings obviously with yourselves, Sue and Sam, to make sure that you're updated as well and give you a breadth of detail that you may require to have that assurance. We continue to meet with our Nottinghamshire colleagues in respect to a whole range of work streams that will support the transition into the new ways of working. There are key things that are being developed around, for example, the development of the ICP, the development of the ICB, finance, for example, HR and OD, primary care, etc., etc. So the whole range of work streams that we are now participating in. There are identified SROs for each of those work streams within the CCG, and we receive regular feedback on the update from those through the task and finish group that's been established internally. We're also engaging and continue to engage with the South Yorkshire colleagues, obviously, in terms of the close down as well as the movement into the Nottinghamshire patch, to make sure that the assurance is also giving with our South Yorkshire colleagues as to progress. And Idris provides that leadership from a CCG point of view into those different leadership forums. We are obviously also engaging with our wider stakeholder community as we progress through this journey. One of the key developments we've also had locally is obviously the consideration with our partners about the place-based arrangements for Bassetlaw. We've now got a draft terms of reference and a draft MOU that will be circulated to comments to colleagues for wider consideration. We've also got a meeting at the end of this month with the ICB chair and interim chief executive, where we'll be articulating to them the hopes and the priorities of place-based working for Bassetlaw. Obviously that will be for us the first meeting of the refreshed place-based partnership arrangements since the former arrangements under the guise of the integrated care partnership. There will be a move to shadow arrangements from January, in which case the place-based arrangements will continue to mature, but we will be seen to be the embryonic form of the partnership that will move from the 1st of April to support place-based working. As part of that arrangement, we've also agreed a clinical leadership structure and approach. The idea within that will be that there will be one overall clinical lead for Bassetlaw Place with 2 supporting clinical leads to support the agendas around quality, health, inequality as well. The process for the appointment of that clinical lead is currently being developed, and Andrew is supporting me in developing that, and we hope to progress that quite soon so that we've got somebody in post for the 1st of April. It is anticipated that we won't go through an appointments process in the formalised way for the other 2 posts for now, but once that lead is in place, then that process will commence from next year. So that's a quick update in terms of where we are for that, Sam. So obviously these conversations are undertaken in much more granularity in other forums, but if you need more information, I'm happy to provide that now.
Okay. Andrew?
Just to note, we've got the first quality and patient safety in primary care ICS meeting this afternoon. So I think it looks a really useful agenda. They're taking a very supportive stance. So I think there's some real benefits to be had from this.
Good, that sounds good, Andrew. Idris, did you want to come in?
Yeah, if I can just add a couple of things, Sam. Thank you. Obviously, we still remain part of the South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw system, and that involves all of the formal sort of committees, both in transition, but also sort of the regular, more routine ones. And I mentioned earlier in passing about potential investment, which is coming through from the ICS on a non-recurring basis. So anything this financial year will still be impacted on from a South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw point of view. And indeed, that investment that we're pretty certain will be coming into Bassetlaw wouldn't be taking place if we were part of the Nottinghamshire system. But we are reassured that because we're still part of the South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw system, that we will get our cut of that investment. I think the progress that is being made is excellent. I think we're in a very good position. I think if anything, we're further on and further developed than most other places. And I suspect that we probably made faster progress due to the impending transition into the Nottinghamshire system than we would have done had we been in the South Yorkshire system, which is ironic in a way, but I think it's a bit more under our control in terms of the pace. And Victoria and all of those working on this have made some excellent progress. I'm obviously incredibly keen to get to the point where we can have individual consultation with members of the board and the staff within the CCG to give them clarity about their future. Victoria just alluded to the fact that we're looking really at developing a shadow form from Q4. And I think, you know, so the pace of development on this, that makes that a realistic possibility. So that means that we need to be talking to all staff, board members and outside as soon as possible. The thing that we're probably waiting for now is the announcement of the chief executive post. So that role was interviewed last week, and I'm hopeful that within the next 2 weeks that will be confirmed. That will fit in with the national timescale as well. Depending on who that is, that could then be a green light to implement all of the things that we've been discussing now for a considerable length of time. If it's somebody else than that, then we may need to just go through some of those conversations again to ensure that that the chief exec is comfortable with that direction of travel. But I'm sort of hopeful that we'll be able to make some progress quite quickly on that. And finally, to note that we've always had a feet in two systems. At this point in time, we are shifting our weight into the Nottinghamshire system, onto that foot away from the South Yorkshire system. It feels, if anything, at the moment that we are stretched more than ever. But yeah, this is a transition phase that we'll go through. I'm really pleased to say now that we are full members of the Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Integrated System Board. I went to the meeting yesterday of that board. I suspect it may well be the last meeting. So my first and last meeting of the current ICS board. We're obviously talking as part of the governance about the representation of place into the new ICB when that's developed. And I also am part of the Transition and Risk Committee, which from a Nottinghamshire perspective is overseeing the transition. So we're well embedded into the Nottinghamshire system, the governance approach for that. So happy to answer any questions if I can, or clarify anything.
Thanks, Idris. Any questions? Okay, no. And as Victoria said, she did come along towards it and gave a very detailed update to where we are with everything. So I think we were assured yesterday and can give that assurance back to this committee today. Okay, lots happening. Thank you.
There is. I should mention as well, just to note, obviously the constitution for the Integrated Care Board is being developed. That's now in draft form, probably nearly final draft form, to be honest. That's due to be submitted on the 3rd of December to the Midlands region, and our governing body in December, as governing body members will be aware, has been moved around a bit so we can have a joint governing body meeting with the Nottingham and Nottinghamshire CCG in order to hopefully approve that constitution before it's sent to region. So we've got that draft which we can circulate to governing body members, and again that feels very timely. We're progressing well. I think you're frozen again, Sam. It's the kids, I'm sure.
Or she's fallen asleep.
What are you saying about my update, Andrew?
We all have to turn the camera off for a bit.
Sue, are you the vice chair?
I am. Shall we carry on? And Sam can join us when she's ready. I think we've pretty much covered that area. So thanks for that update. It was really useful. And as Sam said, we were getting. Are you back? As Sam said, we were getting a lot of assurance from the various sources of meetings. So thank you very much for keeping us up to date on what's happening. So can we move on to the policies and procedures guidance manual? Andrew.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting agenda item as well. This is a manual we're required to follow anyway as a CCG under delegation, but it's something we get audited on I think that we're aware of it and that we've noted any updates. So I just put it on every year just to note that we do follow it. Members who are in the confidential section, which is regarding support for one of our practices, will note that we actually do quote it when we need to. We try to quote that we're following it, but we always do it. It's expected of us. So if we could, Charlotte, just record that in the minutes, please.
Yeah, because actually for formal documents, it's relatively easy to read, isn't it? So it's fairly straightforward and easy to follow. So thanks for that. Sam, we've done the policies and procedures guidance manual.
Thanks. I'll give it another go, Sue. But if it continues, you might just be better taking over because it'll be a pain.
Okay.
Okay. So GP access and GP appointment data, Andrew, to note, and I know you sent round a separate email as well.
Yeah. There's obviously been a lot of we always note the monthly figures, or we have done for the last 6 or 7 months. But I thought there's been a lot of attention on GP appointment data, and I thought the committee would value seeing some more of the comparative information that we've started to get through. I would heavily caveat this information, and I know it's in public because I think it's part of the public interest, by saying I think it's accepted that this data isn't all going to be 100% accurate. What we're doing at the moment with quite a lot of the GP appointment data that's taken from GPAD is we're running local searches to see how we compare in our own from our practices, and we've talked about this at Primary Care Leads last night. It appears to me at the moment, as we've investigated it, that things like when a GP is tasked by another care professional and phones up a patient as a result of that, that seems to be missing. So we've been trying to work out where the disparities lie, but that's going to be across the country. So I think it's still useful for us to look at this information and just consider where we stand. I think it's fairly clear, but just to explain that this data is per 1,000 registered patients. So you've got per 1,000 registered raw list and per 1,000 patients weighted list. And we have a higher weighted population than the average. So you'll see that when it comes to the number of appointments, obviously then our number of appointments per 1,000 patients goes down when we look at it from a weighted point of view. We're consistently higher in terms of overall appointment numbers, and we're consistently quite a lot higher when it comes to on-the-day appointments. The trade-off to that, to some extent, and I think practices would say this is the truth. Eric, I'm happy for you to chip in any stages. We do have a lot of on-the-day telephone appointments. We've had that sort of system bringing into Bassetlaw. That's not something new to COVID. We've been looking at doing that and having telephone triage and bringing in patients when they need to be seen face to face for maybe the last 5 or 6 years. I think since about 2015, we've been slowly going down that path. Certain practices faster than others, but all of us looking at it and talking about it at the forum. So I think it's really open to people to discuss this. There's going to be more and more GP appointment data, I think, coming as we refine it. But time to have more of an open conversation with the public about what the priorities are. Eric.
Thanks, Andrew. I would agree in terms of the sort of on the day appointments. We've got 2 practices, one particularly large that actually use the Ask My GP system, which is all very much geared to same day access for all issues. So yeah, so our numbers will be skewed, but actually that's I think good same day access hopefully will help cut ED attendance down.
I think it's also worth noting just the pure numbers here. I actually did receive September's data through, but too late for this committee. So I got it through on Wednesday, and there were well over 60,000 appointments provided, and that's just the recorded appointments in Bassetlaw during September. That's an enormous amount. That's more than 1 for every 2 patients appointments in September. So that's going up to an average of over 6 a year appointments provided. I think that's a very it wasn't as high, I would say, as September 2019, but that's still an enormous amount of appointments offered.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of publicity about extra money coming down to fund more face-to-face appointments, but also the response that actually the money on its own isn't going to solve the problem, because the issue is capacity. And I just wondered where we stand in relation to that. What have the practices flagged in terms of their response to that sort of push to increase face-to-face, and how is it, how's it going to be managed? Recognising there isn't a finite number of locums to be pulled in or extra capacity elsewhere.
I think you summed it up there, Sue, to be honest. With the conversations I've had, it's very stretched in terms of actually bringing in lots of locums. The funding's always welcome, but it's not a solution in itself. There's got to be other approaches towards it as well.
Victoria, an address?
Yeah, just to say that looking at the figures from September as well, we've had one of the highest increases in face-to-face amongst our peer groups. We've had a 3.4% increase when you look at the data, which is phenomenal, really, given the constraints on people's times within primary care. So actually, Bassetlaw has definitely increased those appointments available to our Bassetlaw population, even in the last month. So, I think primary care have to be applauded for the hard work that they continue to do under very, very challenging circumstances, and demand in itself, you can see, has absolutely rocketed. So I think what we're trying to do is recognise those challenges that they have. Absolutely, workforce is one of the largest constraints that all our provider organisations, irrespective of whatever sector they're in, are all facing soon. And this is a very challenging environment for everybody. What we hope to do with the Winter Access Funds is provide a supportive package. I think we're in a culture in Bassetlaw where we don't want to be punitive. We want to support people to improve, and we don't believe in the performance management approach that isn't absolutely necessary. Where it is necessary, we'll do it, but otherwise it's a supportive approach that we want to take, and the investment opportunities that we have identified have been co-designed with our CDs within our PCNs to listen to their views about what would help them most. And there's a range of initiatives that we've got some thoughts and ideas that we want to progress quite quickly with, and we're just waiting now to make sure that we've got the funding to do that, but we hope to aggressively pursue those within the next weeks.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. Idris?
Yeah, Victoria took some of the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No, absolutely, because it is really important that there is, I think, there's a segment of the public and indeed parts of the health service that feel that general practice ought to be performance managed, or that they could be doing more. And our view is very much that GP practices are doing incredibly well under very difficult circumstances. And not least, they've just delivered one of the best vaccination programs on the planet. So the negative press around general practice at the moment, so I have a very significant problem with, to be honest. Hospitals have got a target of 25% of their appointments should be done non-face-to-face. And these are specialist consultants, so referrals. So actually the drive pre-COVID was to do more non-face-to-face, more digital. What it means as well for patients is, and Andrew will correct me if I get these numbers wrong, that 47% of patients get an appointment on the day, and actually in Bassetlaw. And one of the reasons for that is that the telephone appointments and digital appointments are more efficient, and they can access GPs more straightforwardly. So if we do more face-to-face, we will do fewer appointments. If we put in the resource, then go back to Sue's point, well, have we really got sort of the staff and things? Yeah. So actually retaining a fairly high proportion of digital appointments means that we can see more patients more quickly. And I will defend that, sort of as the principle. But it does put us slightly at loggerheads at the moment with some colleagues in NHS England, but we'll try and manage that through. But I mean, we've heard some of the numbers here that, you know, in 1 month, every other person in Bassetlaw on average gets to see a GP or somebody in the GP practice. It's a huge proportion. 47% of those get to see and have that appointment on the day. And nearly a similar proportion are actually already seeing face-to-face. You know, we are seeing fairly high proportions of people seeing face-to-face. And there's no evidence really that there's been any detriment in terms of the new way of working. And pre-COVID, I think I would have been delighted if we got to this point in Bassetlaw. We would have been sort of forerunners. Yeah, it's really to back up the point that Victoria just made and defend, you know, sort of what the excellent work the GP practices are doing.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just to reiterate that this, I think, is a conservative estimate. These numbers are a conservative estimate of the actual amount of work that goes on in primary care. It's probably, I wouldn't say the tip of the iceberg, but there's plenty under the water as well.
Thank you. Next item to note is the QoF data, Andrew. Again, I know this has been circulated separately.
Yeah, there's a couple of bits to this. So we didn't think initially we were going to be able to analyse the data, and good for Helen Woods, she persevered, and after this front sheet went out, managed to get us some decent information that I think we can use to clarify where practices are really. I'd like in the public bit for us to delegate this to the performance group. So it doesn't have to be, I think, the full group, possibly myself, Hessian, Helen Woods and Sam, if you could make it, and we have a proper look at this data on behalf of the committee. I would also like a short conversation, if we could, in confidential A, about some of the initial results and some of the actions that we're taking as a result of them.
Okay. Committee happy to approve for the ops group to look at it? Yep. Lovely, and we'll come back to it. Thank you, Andrew. And you again, Andrew, on the COVID vaccination update and then the flu update, both to note, and separate papers being circulated as well.
Yeah, sorry for bombarding you with late things, but obviously with the vaccination campaign, it's important, I think, to get the most up-to-date information. You'll see that we're working down the booster. Our practice, our sites and MBS are working down the booster, so we're at about 71-72% of over 80s have now had their booster vaccination, about 60% of 75 to 79, and a little bit less on the 70 to 75. So that's sort of going ahead. The 12 to 15 campaign, we are on target to have visited all of the schools in Bassetlaw by the end of November the 15th, which is the target date. So that's gone to plan as much as it can. You'll note that there's a slightly lower uptake in the earlier schools that were visited. So we've got to make sure that there's a reoffer to those children. It's quite a difficult time, I'd say, at the moment in the vaccination campaign. There's quite a lot going on in it. We've gone back to January to a degree in terms of we're having to try to pull down as many supplies as we can, and there is a bit of a limit on the vaccine supplies at the moment. There's a move towards Moderna, which is clinically, if you look at the data, it's a very good thing to have Moderna as your booster vaccination or your second vaccination, but there is a move towards that, and so there are some difficulties in it. And elsewhere, not in Bassetlaw particularly, there are a record number of complaints about the vaccination campaign. A lot of them seem to hinge on the fact that you get two, which we've always had, two invites, and the national booking system invite is outpacing, so supplies, etc., outpacing a lot of the local vaccination sites. And what that means is then people are going on, but they're actually finding that on the MBS, the closest place they can be vaccinated is 30, 40, in some cases for the 12 to 15-year-olds, it's York. So certainly Rotherham and other places are getting a lot of complaints. So we're looking at we've done a couple of actions to take that out of the equation. A couple of our sites, now Retford and Newgate, are going to go on the national booking service. That means that particularly 12 to 15-year-olds, but anybody will be able to book into slots that are put on there. So it should mean that we get a lot more local access. When that letter comes through, you'll actually be able to book into a local site, as well as there'll be the call in as there's been from the text. The other thing is we're establishing a single email. So also if people feel that they've been missed out of the particularly their second vaccine, or the 12 to 15-year-olds who've been missed out, they can do a single email address, and that's going to be accessed by the practices, so not by the CCG, so that they can then slot anybody who feels that they've been missed out or there's a problem into a vaccine slot. So it is happening, but it's difficult at the moment, I would say, in summary. But we're getting there, and we're still, as you'd see, comparatively ahead of most of our local other CCGs.
Just on the schools, Andrew, have we had any feedback regarding the uptake and then around it?
We've not really had much feedback. I mean, we had positive feedback. We had positive feedback, very positive feedback from St Giles and Oaks, which were the first schools that we went into in Retford. And it's a bit ironic that they particularly Oaks has got a bit of a lower uptake. And we had a few complaints came in afterwards to say from parents to say, well, actually, I did consent, but I didn't get my consent form in time. And they were the first. So if you remember at the beginning, it was quite a tight timescale in terms of mobilising the school immunisation service. It was quite tight, and therefore, in terms of the consent went out just before the weekend to be returned just after the weekend, and the first schools were visited, I think, on the Tuesday. So I think there have been some issues where parents probably wanted to consent but didn't get the forms in. The school immunisation team didn't have the time on the day to actually establish that if they didn't have the forms. So which is why we need to go back to making sure that those children get offered a second opportunity to be vaccinated. Other than that, then you see when you go to the Elizabethan, which was done only a week later, and is just across the other side of Retford and has exactly the same children cohort, really. The vaccination rate went up from about high 20s to mid 40s. So I think there's just an issue there. But apart from that, everybody said on the day it's gone very smoothly and really well run.
Good. Any questions for Andrew around COVID vaccinations? Thank you, Andrew. On to flu.
Again, I've distributed the paper that Leslie kindly has done for board, as well as the front sheet I've done here. Actually, I picked this up with it because it looks like we're a bit behind, but I'm aware that there's often a data lag in terms of the flu vaccination information. So it was my meeting with Kingfisher yesterday, one of our bigger practices, and they are at 80% of over 60s. I think they've now vaccinated, anyway, they're way ahead of the figures that we've distributed. So I think what I'm going to try to do is ask the practices to let us know where they stand in terms of the actual flu vaccination campaign. There are reasons why we'd be a bit behind, and obviously with the 12 to 15-year-olds, a lot of the flu visits have been taken by the COVID campaign, but I don't think we're quite as far behind last year as actually this data maybe portrays. It seems to be going fairly well. We've not had any problems with the practices, and credit to Eric, I'll credit Retford and Villages, where some of the practices haven't had their flu delivery, and it's only a few. So Leverton didn't, for example, get their vaccine delivery. They've been helped out by the other practices within the PCN who've lent them flu vaccines, which is obviously pretty positive stuff.
Okay, Victoria.
I just thought it might be worth mentioning that Retford and Villages PCN does perform consistently in the top performing PCNs across South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw around COVID vaccinations. So I do think we need to mention that there's a lot of work and effort gone into all the PCNs. I fully appreciate that, but it is good to see Bassetlaw PCNs up there.
Thank you, Victoria. Duly noted.
Yeah, you're second, Eric. Don't get too cocky.
Stuart's applauding you. Thank you. Any questions on flu for Andrew? Okay. And Andrew, again, to note, incentive scheme, a verbal update.
Yeah, I've spoken to quite a few practices. I've not had many written plans back from the practices. Most seem to be focusing on the review part of it, which I think is natural enough. So I'd like to see them probably do a little bit more on the health inequalities section at the beginning of the incentive scheme. I'd suggest that it's been a difficult month. It's been a difficult couple of months for primary care. So I've tried not to be pushing this too hard. But on the other hand, we do need to support practices to be cracking on with it now, because we've only got a few months left of the year. And so I'd suggest if we could make a decision today that we give practices a bit of a deadline for written plans. And perhaps if we say the end of November, that way, if there is a problem, we've got time to sort of address it with the practice and make sure that they get through in terms of the incentive scheme this year. Because if we let it slide until early in the new year, there won't be time to actually complete the work.
Is committee happy with that end of November date? So we'll approve that. Thank you, Andrew. Victoria, did you want to note anything else on this section?
No.
No. Thank you. Section 5, service development, nothing to note. On to section 6, finance. Michelle, financial report.
Thank you, Sam. Brief report this month. There's been no significant change to the financial position since the last committee meeting. We've got a very small reported underspend at the end of September. Just to note as well that no forecasts are included in the report, as at the time that it was written we didn't have the allocations for the second half of the year. However, we have received the details of that initial allocation now for H2, the second half of the year. This shows no change to the funding that's been delegated to us for primary medical care, and the draft financial plan that we've submitted to the ICS are therefore at the same level as H1, with the addition of a further £85,000 of funding that's coming to us for the new leadership and management payment. That's payable from October. As I say, short report this month. So happy to take any questions on either H1 or H2 position.
Okay. Any questions? And I think just noting that it was audit committee yesterday, and we had a comprehensive update yesterday regarding all of the finances. So, do you want to add anything?
No, I feel assured that you're as far on as you possibly can be with your H2 planning, and that actually it looks like we've not got major issues, particularly around the primary care finances. So I'm happy with where we're standing.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Sam.
And next item, primary care networks, verbal update. Andrew and Victoria.
You're the boss. Do you want me to speak to it or you? Well, I suppose it's worth noting that we Victoria, you're on mute. We have two new clinical directors, Eric in an interim position and Dr. Nanthakumar at Larwood. So I think we ought to thank Dr. Davey and Dr. Chapman, the outgoing CDs who've done such a good job over the last, is it 3 years?
Is it that long?
Time does seem to whistle away. So that's been, it's quite a sort of a big thing over the last couple of months, obviously. The other thing, obviously, is the R's, which is mentioned in the workforce update, in that we took the decision here, we had to take the decision here to use Retford's underspend to support the overspends at both Newgate and Larwood, and that decision was taken virtually between meetings and has been actioned. But I think it's fair to say that there's quite a bit of support going to come in terms of workforce through the winter access funds. So I would hope that now any further plans that Retford and Villages and the other two PCNs have made in terms of those workforce that can help us get a platform for next year as well, can be supported through the Winter Access Fund, because that's really what the spirit of it is all about. It provides extra capacity. It provides a bit more of a stable, hopefully, planning platform. Instead of doing it sort of in a chunk year by year, we can help the PCNs do these things more gradually. Victoria, have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the main thing obviously is around the change of CDs, and obviously Eric's already informed you of his interim position at the moment. And obviously our thanks do go to Joel for all the hard work that he has put into developing Retford and Villages. And we're hoping that the new leadership will continue to obviously help Retford and Villages PCN on its journey for maturity, which is you know, really successful so far, and long may it continue. Obviously, also Richard Davey has now relinquished the role of CD into Larwood and Bawtry, and that has been taken up by Kumar, as Andrew said. And Kumar obviously brings a lot of skills and experience into that new role. Obviously, being a governing body GP, he's also very insightful in terms of the wider strategic developments in the patch. So it's been a really, really helpful, smooth transition, I think, into both those roles, having the experience that we've got from both Eric and Kumar into the CD role. So I think that's really, really been helpful and created an opportunity for transition that otherwise I think for other PCNs might have been quite tricky at very challenging time. So I think Bassetlaw has very much valued that ability to take and exploit that expertise, and thanks to Eric and Kumar for doing that. I think in terms of moving forward, obviously we've got a big task of work and we are going to be supportive as we can through the use of the winter funding. But I think there is now coming a juncture in the development of our PCNs where we need to really think seriously about what those development plans need to look like to start to prepare us for a new way of working into the ICB. So I'm going to suggest that we do a bit of a workshop, a bit more of a concentrated period of time with the CDs to think about what the blueprint for Bassetlaw PCNs needs to look like over the course of the next immediate, medium and longer term. And that absolutely needs to dovetail into the wider development of the Bassetlaw Place partnership as well. One of the key priorities that we are being asked to do as part of the new legislative framework at Place is to support our PCNs in their ongoing journey of maturity. And I'd like very much to continue to work with our PCN CDs to think about how we best place our PCNs to be resilient, to weather the ongoing storms of capacity issues and other things that are being placed at their door, and allow the PCNs to really be the front runner of the delivery of our health and equalities agenda, as well as our wider NHS requirements as well, because they really are our jewel in our crown in Bassetlaw. There's a lot more development opportunity, I think, that we have, particularly around the integration of teams, the integration of pathways and ways of working across our acute and our community and our voluntary and community sector. So that's a kind of a development plan I'd like to put in place or start working with the CDs on into the new year.
Okay, Idris?
Yes, thanks, Sam. Yeah, I put in the chat it's 2 years, but I'm going to split the difference with you, Andrew. It's 2.5 years, of course. But of course, in Bassetlaw, we had primary care homes before we had PCN, so we were actually ahead of the sort of the national change. And of course, Larwood and Bawtry was a primary care home for some time before that. And I think just picking up the point that Victoria made in terms of sort of the integration of teams, I think there's probably more that we can still do on that. So community nursing is being restructured so their teams mirror the footprints of the PCNs. We've got new mental health posts so potentially going in, and we've got social prescribing on the PCN footprint. So there is real opportunities here for going even further in terms of focusing care around the individual as opposed to the service, and providing more holistic joined up care rather than the passing one patient sort of from one part of the social health and social care system to another. And at the Nottinghamshire ICS board meeting yesterday, we heard fantastic reports of a pilot elsewhere in Nottinghamshire of an integrated team looking at psychosocial sort of care. And we had a patient actually attend the meeting to give her story about what significant difference it had made to her life. It was quite powerful sort of patient story. And I think we can do more, not just as a new dedicated team, as that pilot was, but actually how do we integrate routinely the care that we provide? How do we make that the way we work, as opposed to, you know, a pilot and initiative in the future? And I think that's in my view, a bold, optimistic aspiration for Bassetlaw for the future, and for the new Bassetlaw Place partnership, and to actually help deliver. Thanks, Sam.
Can I suggest, Sam, that we do write formal letters thanking Joel and Richard as well, and Andrew and I will do that, if that's okay. We'll pen something and then we'll get that over to you, Sam, to sign on behalf of the PCC.
That would be great. Thank you, Victoria. Any questions? Okay. And Andrew, workforce planning update, ours, which you referred to a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think we've mainly covered it. I suppose I'd just like to make the point that with Retford and Villagers, they have worked a lot on their workforce plans, and we've been in sort of continual email contact a bit with them, and they are coming up with further plans as we go. So I don't want it to appear, because they had an underspend, as in they hadn't fully utilised their budget this year at that stage, that it's a criticism of Retford and Villagers. They're continually working on these things, so which is why I think the Winter Access Fund will be particularly useful for them, in that it'll then provide a sort of smoother bridge towards next year's plans, and it'll allow them to sort of evolve in their workforce. That's all really.
Okay, thank you. Any questions around workforce? No. Thank you. On to digital and IT section. Thomas, your paper to note.
Morning. I'll just run through the key points from the paper. So firstly, KPI 1, there was a failure of that KPI. That's around all calls to the service desk being answered within 2 minutes. The average answer time through the period was 39 seconds. It's just peak times where we are looking at ways to improve that service, and we're just currently just discussing bringing in an extra member of staff on that team to assist with those peak times. The 2021 GPIT refresh is wrapping up now, and we've received funding for 21-22. So for Bassetlaw, that equates to, in terms of laptops, we'll be bringing in an additional 30 refresh laptops, 10 break fix, and then 14 laptops for PCN growth. We did request funding for laptops for the ARRS roles, and we are chasing that because it's in the P2. So we are chasing that down to make sure that we can bring that in where possible. So practices should receive toolkits next week, asking for details of, it's just a brief audit before we then look at prioritising the refresh laptops. And then the last point is Wi-Fi. So the floor plans have been received, and we're just arranging installation dates with a third party. Martin Richardson's running that programme.
Thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, we have talked previously, haven't we, about making sure that all the previous kit that we've provided is absolutely utilised, and we've not got laptops languishing in cupboards and drawers not being used, when actually other practices and colleagues might find them quite helpful. So do we feel confident, Tom, that we're exploiting every opportunity to use the kit that we've already got, as well as buying new stuff where it's needed?
Yeah, so we've got new monthly processes where what we do is we run, using the Avanti Asset Management and Landsweeper, we run reports to say, to just check when laptops were last logged in on the network, and to make sure that, not only from a security perspective, to make sure that they're receiving their updates to keep the network secure, but also to make sure that we get best use of assets. Now, Bassetlaw are very good at utilising their assets. Other areas, perhaps under my purview in BBS, are not so good. So it's not that we've forgotten you, it's just that they are well utilised. But I will get those reports. They run every month. I will get them over to you so that we can chase down any stragglers.
Thanks.
Okay. Any questions for Thomas? Thank you, Thomas. Comprehensive update. So thank you for that. Lee, Adele, on to next item, general estates update.
Good morning. So quick update, primary care data gathering, that process is now complete for Bassetlaw. I do just need to confirm that Larwood did submit their information, but in terms of the oversight from the CHP central team, that's finished. PCN estate strategies, we started with Retford and Villages estate strategy. We expect that that will be completed by January, and we've got we are arranging a meeting with Larwood and Blythe to discuss who wants to be the link and the lead for their estate strategy. Middleton and Gringley, I can update actually since this paper. Colin has sent through the quotes, and he had previously sent them through, but for some reason there was in my junk mail, so I'd missed them. Next steps around that is we need to get those quotes put into the PID template and submitted by mid next week, because the next meeting is the week after that and they need them a week in advance. Newgate Health and Wellbeing Hub. So this is in terms of the capital programme. We had the Stage Gate 6 review, feels like a lifetime ago, but I'm sure it was only 3 or 4 weeks ago. The existing building was rated as red, and it's been red for the last 2 stage gates. The issue that we have around that is that we haven't got a structural survey, so we can't define the scope of the works required, and therefore we can't submit. But we are working on that as best we can. We got the new build proposal has been rated amber on the last 2 occasions. The designs are frozen for that now. We have confirmed at Stage Gate that we do need to deliver a BREEAM excellent building, so we're getting quotes for BREEAM consultant, and that's progressing. We've had a CIA workshop which was well received by all partners. It's very enthusiastic involvement. We've updated all the necessary registers and the work continues. We've got agreed action plans for what we need to do next. This week there was an urgent meeting to discuss the rejuvenation and the new build, because everyone was given a 4-week extension to go away and review the plans. I think we're fairly confident that the new build will progress, but we do have the concerns about lack of scope for the existing. In terms of the Bassetlaw local plan, the CCG provided representations to the deeper dive around the soundness and legal tests that are required. And recently at the Bassetlaw SEG, I just want to say that Bev, who leads on planning from the council, was absolutely beside herself, ecstatic about how well we'd done around health and the planning, working together to look at section 106 health contributions and what possible scope for health and wellbeing buildings we might need from the developers to deliver up as part of their plans. So it's really positive news on that front. And there's just a couple of points I will pick up in confidential.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Any questions for Lee? Victoria?
I just think it's worth noting from PCC that there's been an awful lot of work gone and put into the work around estates from Lee, and I just wanted to say thank you to Lee for that hard work. I don't think we should underestimate the progress that's been made around the section 106s. I think we are one of a very, very few CCGs in the entire country that have been able to progress this work with their local authorities. And actually, that really is a feather in the cap of Bassetlaw, and very much down to the hard work that Lee's put into the relationship with the council and other partners. So I just think it's worth noting and saying thank you to Lee for all the ongoing hard work for that, as well as the work around the development of Newgate Health and Wellbeing Hub as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and we will formally minute that. And I'm sure all members will agree as well. So we know there's a lot of work that goes on outside of these meetings, so thank you. Okay. Next item is items for escalation to Quality and Patient Safety Committee. I'm going to look at Sue. I don't think we've got any. And as escalations of issues to governing body, nothing that would not ordinarily go. And again from audit, so no. Okay. So we'll go on to risk management. just get my paper up. So we've got the risk on around the workforce resilience. We've got that down as a current low risk, and an update from October noting that primary care continues to be challenged around this, as is nationally. Victoria, did you want to add anything else on that? Are we happy with the risk at 4 at the moment?
Yeah, I don't think anything changed since the review, Sam, but happy to take any thoughts from colleagues if they think differently.
I just wondered whether we needed to recognise the additional pressures caused by this push to get more face-to-face and the impact on capacity.
I think we might put that, Sue, if it comes to some further measures by NHS England to be firmer about the requirement, but I believe that there is something that's going to be produced very soon that might suggest that some of that language may be toned down a little bit about expectations. I was reading some of the medical press yesterday. I've not seen anything formally, but obviously there are ongoing conversations, I think, between the RCGP as well as the BMA and NHS England. And my understanding is that a special request has gone into the RCGP about the standards around, and I use that term loosely, around the quantity of face-to-face or the proportion around that. So I think at this moment in time, given the fact that we've got a voice of agreement, I think, across South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw as well, in terms of our general approach, which is a very supportive approach to our primary care colleagues. I probably wouldn't change it now, Sue, but absolutely something to be kept an eye on.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. So I would say no other risks to note at the moment, or any IGO security risks. Any other business for the public section? No. So we'll close the public section and stop recording. Will people appreciate 10 minutes for a coffee?